Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I share a completely different story in the world of how technology is transforming our world. And yes, I do have many guests from Silicon Valley on here, but I'm passionate about giving everyone a voice. And we've been fortunate to feature guests from over 70 different countries. And I say this because I'm quite excited to get today's guest on, because Infobip, the communications platform as a service, became the first Croatian company to reach unicorn status back in 2020. And in the last 12 months alone, over 5 billion people have used Infobip solutions and services, and they have a partnership with Adobe and also expanded to 65 plus offices across 6 continents. So today I've invited my new friend Ivan onto the podcast, who is also the Chief Business Officer at Infobip. But enough spoilers from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the beautiful Croatia, where you can join me and Ivan in conversation right now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about how you got here and share your origin story with everyone listening?
Yeah, so my name is Ivan. I'm Chief Business Officer of Infobip, a global cloud communications platform. And I actually had an interesting career. So I'm born in Serbia, where I finished undergraduate studies, and then I actually quickly moved to Switzerland for postgraduate studies in natural science. But I was always also actually interested in technology. So while I was doing PhD, I also did another master in management and of technology and innovation at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, ETH, in Zurich. And with the group of people, tech was very kind of popular there. We founded a startup, a digital startup, it was many years ago. And however, very quickly, one of the founders went to IBM, and I ended up in McKinsey and Company. At the time, McKinsey had very strong, on-campus recruiting, especially at tech universities. Actually, during my time in McKinsey, we managed to shift recruiting, our main kind of influx of people from St. Gallen, which is a business school. And now the majority actually comes from ETH. So I was in McKinsey and I did a couple of things. So I was for a bit part of innovation practice. And then we very quickly built something we call business building practice, which is a kind of a little bit encapsulated unit within McKinsey that works with tech companies or corporates to build new businesses. So I was more kind of a business builder. And at the same time, I was also taking care a lot about tech things. So, we realized tech is changing the world and we have to be ahead of the curve. So together with another colleague, we founded something we called McKinsey Technology Council. So we published quite a bit of interesting articles around tech trends of the future. And then we deep dive with major CEOs of quantum companies into quantum computing and so forth. And then in one of my endeavors, I worked a lot also with tech companies. I met Silvia, Roberto, and Isabel, who are founders of Infobip. And I felt in love into Infobip's story. And I was already a partner in McKinsey. And I just thought, it's time for me to go into, from being an advisor to being an executive. So I jumped on board of Infobip, and I'm really enjoying the ride. It's a great company with a great talent. So I'm very happy to be here. But one thing I want to reflect on, I come with quite the rich of experience, building businesses or working with other executives of tech companies, seeing quite a broad, spectrum, and also helping them think about the future. So I think, it's a very good symbiosis, I would say.
It really is. And of course, as you said, that platform led you to Infobip, and it is a communications platform as a service, and which also became the first Croatian company to reach unicorn status back in 2020. But for people that are hearing about Infobip for the very first time, can you tell me a little bit more about the company and that story behind becoming a unicorn?
Maybe we start with the story, because the story is actually much bigger and much more interesting than becoming a first Croatian unicorn. So, we were founded in 2006 by our founders, Silvio, Isabel, and Roberto. So Silvio is CEO, Isabel is CTO, Roberto is COO, I'm CBO. So Silvio, Isabel, and Roberto, I mean, essentially, they bootstrapped this company from zero revenue to $1 billion revenue with no external investment, except that Silvio had a loan to his parents of 25,000 euros. So like literally no loan to the banks, no investors, no nothing. So it's like tech from 0 to 1 billion, completely bootstrapped. And then, we had to make a move to US market. And we kind of realized it's a little bit too difficult to do that just organically, which was our standard motion. And we are a very engineering-led company, so we needed a bit stronger commercial muscle, but we also needed like infrastructure in US. So we did an acquisition of a company called Open Market, which is also present in US. They were part of Amdocs. And for that, we raised some capital. And when we raised the capital, I mean, it was actually a small investment relative to the company, but actually that immediately made us unicorn. Then actually we kind of continued our expansion in US by acquisition of another company called Peerless. This still has to be regulatory approved, but in principle, we're kind of moving further. So that's the story. I think it's the fact that the founding team and then the team around them managed to build a company that is actually completely bootstrapped is quite, in today's world, it's actually, I would say it's the fascinating story that I also felt in love. I think when it comes what Infobip does, I'll try to simplify it for your listeners, but I think it's important to understand. So we together with some of our partners and competitors like Twilio, we created this category that's called CPaaS. It's Communication Platforms as a Service, but in fact, it's a cloud communication company. And we are one of the only, we call it full stack CPaaS companies. So what that means, it's like a lot of buzzwords. Essentially, we have a lot of partnerships with telco companies and also, some sort of data centers and so forth, which represents an infrastructure layer where we have certain hardware that facilitates, routing of communication channels, that facilitates security and so forth. On top of that hardware, there is like a platform layer, software platform layer that then, take all of this hardware embedded into these communication channels and turns them into a software platform that is then sort of converted into simple APIs. So if you're building an app or a software system or anything, and you need to sort of send a message to somebody or send an email to somebody, you can do it by simply using an API that we provide to you. We have a consumption-based model, so we'll charge you something for that message. And you can be sure that that message will be delivered to anyone in the world. You don't need to take care of infrastructure. You don't need to take care about anything. So that's kind of, let's say, layer number 2, that API layer with all communication channels. Today, we have more than 30 communication channels in our platform, all kind of through a simple APIs on a single platform, very easy to do. Then on top of that, we have so-called orchestration layer that manages orchestration of this communication channels into true, say, omni-channel experience. That's kind of layer 3. And then layer 4, it's what we call kind of low-code layer. We have applications. It's a software layer. So, for example, just to give, if you want to create a chatbot that uses within any of the communication channels or that uses multiple communication channels, you can use it. You can do that in our application layer. So to do, let's say, customer service, and you need a chatbot, you could just use our chatbot building platform. All the channels are there already, and you can channel that customer in any in any way you want. We also have omni-channel communication contact center, and we have also something we call Moments, which is like orchestration, simple orchestration builder. So if somebody logs into your platform, you can program what will be the next step with that customer. And we have also something called CDP, so Customer Data Platform, where we store all the data with the interaction. So you can build analytics on that. And then the fifth layer will be a marketplace where we can have further applications through our partners. So that's kind of what we call full stack. So we have all the stacks and they're working quite well. And, we power the world of communication. So we're kind of equivalent to cloud computing, what cloud computing companies are for artificial intelligence. We would be their equivalent for communication. So essentially, you use any of the components that I just described of this full stack to build your customer journeys, and whatever you build, it's yours. Similar like cloud, like AI companies, they build algorithms on top of the cloud and the algorithms belong to them. So this kind of analogy just for people to understand, but that's a little bit how we work. And, we are pretty embedded in many like big companies that So for example, this is public reference, so I can talk about it. Uber, when you receive Uber message, it's most likely going through our infrastructure, and so on and so on.
And just to bring to life some of the things that are happening right now, I believe in the last 12 months alone, over 5 billion people have used Infobip solutions and services, and it's also expanded to over 65 offices across 6 continents, and now making a major play for the North American market. So it feels like an incredibly exciting time for you guys right now.
Extremely exciting. We are, first of all, correct. So we are a truly global company, and we have, all this infrastructure I described, telco partners, we have all around the world. So, you can reach people anywhere you want. It is true that we touch 5 billion people. Actually, the numbers are even more impressive. So we have over 200 billion of messages sent through our platform through the year. And, just on Black Friday, we had more than 2 billion interactions. So these are massive amounts of communications that go through us. In North America, we also actually manage, most of the communication at the infrastructure layer, but now we're kind of working with customers in the application layer and so forth. So that's actually real growth. But the other thing is we have this partnership mindset. So we really see communication as a sort of an ecosystem where different people, and we want to be one of the central parts of the ecosystem. So we have other platforms that sell to other businesses that use us, our link between infrastructure to software. They use our components of our stack to deliver the value to their customers. So it's really like a huge ecosystem that's being built around our platform. And that's also how we are kind of approaching US, because we have a very strong engineering base. And we're trying to, expand and bring innovation into way how we bring communication. And to wrap up this whole story, I think really our vision is to democratize communication. So if you're a small store, I know you're in UK, if you're a small store somewhere in England, we'll give you the same options to communicate with your customers as we would give to big corporation. And it'll be very simple. You can use our API. So we are really making communication world simpler, and we are really democratizing this. And that's kind of the vision we stand behind.
And as this is a tech podcast, I've got to ask, can you tell me a little bit more about the technology that makes it easier to overcome the complexity of consumer communications and actually allow leaders to grow their business and focus on that instead? Because there will be some IT directors wanting to take a look under the hood at the tech that makes it all possible. So is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we have, we sometimes say on the websites, we are the most connected company, but that just means we have literally direct connections with many telco partners into the telco channels. And we have some hardware there and routing and so forth. On top of that, there are 48 data centers around the world that actually then, combine all of these channels through different carriers or telco providers into a software layer, as I was trying to explain. And then, that we turn into APIs. So for example, through our APIs, we facilitate many things, compliance. So, certain countries have certain rules, how you can send messages to your customers. It's managed through our software. We manage capacity. As I told you, these are enormous capacity that we are managing. So we have queuing systems and so forth. That's also through our APIs. We can give you reporting. That's also through our APIs. So that's that very robust and stable layer. So and then as I was explaining earlier, we have this orchestration that helps people orchestrate between different channels. So imagine if you're using, let's imagine you're using WhatsApp to communicate with the customers, but we know the message did not receive. We have a fallback options to transfer that communication on SMS. So that kind of complexity is also being managed through our software and orchestration. That, as I said, we have simple application layer that makes, let's say marketing teams in companies easy to build their campaigns using, let's say, our Moments, which is customer journey orchestration platform, and so forth. So that's a bit like what's under the hood, but it's really powered by this link between infrastructure and software that I was explaining at the beginning of my answer.
And you mentioned a few moments ago the Uber example on how anyone that's had a message through Uber, it will probably have come through to you guys at some point. And I appreciate you probably can't mention too many names, but are there any other use cases that you can share that will just help people listening understand how this might help them in their world too?
So I have to tell you, I'm very excited actually with what's coming now our way. And I was talking to that in different places. So we have something that we call death of an app. It's not literally a death of an app, but finally with all of this stack that we have now, we can enable our customers to build end-to-end customer journey in any channel that their consumers or patients or whatever industry you want to take like. So what I mean by that? So like, for example, we can build end-to-end customer journey from, searching a service, through selecting a service, through paying a service and giving feedback in something like WhatsApp, like literally end to end. So you don't need to have an app anymore to complete the customer journey. And that's a vision that we are working toward, and you'll be hearing more from us on that. But one of the first cases that we've just done and was recently in the press is together with Dior and with Meta, we have launched, let's say, influencer campaign with an influencer called Yisu, where she essentially used her Instagram profile to invite people to join her WhatsApp group. And then within that WhatsApp group, it was built on our chatbot. Dior, in this case, was launching educational campaign about using of certain of their makeup cosmetics products, tutorials, but it's so-called conversational commerce. So at the end of every tutorial, there was like a question for a consumer, and consumer could say, yeah, I want more, or I want something else. And this enabled to continue this dialogue. And at certain points, this also enables you to send promotions or to send certain links. So that's the beginning of that, what I was telling you earlier. And, we also see emergence of this in many channels, in SMS and so forth. For example, that's one of the big, use cases or examples that we're working. And I gave you some names. Other cases that we're working on are much more in management and customer service, where you can use similar technologies to get very intimate, let's say, connection and seamless connection with your customers. So, for example, if I have a certain problem, I could use chatbot. I could get quick resolution. If not, immediately in that chatbot, we could auto recognize that the problem is not solved and generate link to send that customer to an agent. And when you go to an agent, because you're using these channels and we have a customer data platform, agent would already have all the information that's exchanged with this customer. So it would shorten the time for customer. It would shorten the time for the company. So that's kind of the other direction that we're going in terms of servicing and so forth. So those are just some examples. You can ask me more specific if you're interested, but we have really a lot. Like, it's really exciting time for us, because in the past it was mainly SMS, verifying, your accounts, verifying your bills, verifying your passcodes. But now the opportunities are really to transform this experience that customer has and to enable, customer journeys in any channels and to enable hyper personalization and memory under quotation marks in any channels that you interact with customers. And that's like really exciting future besides geographic growth.
And of course, you're working right in the heart of this space. So I'm curious, what are the macro trends that you're seeing in the API market at the moment? Is there anything that is standing out to you?
Yeah, for me, I have to say there are a couple of them. First of all, as I mentioned, I will put this again under quotation mark, but I'll say a resurrection of SMS and messaging channels in marketing space, because people realize it's much more effective than, let's say, email marketing, because it's so much more intimate and it's two-way. You can ask questions, you can engage, and so forth. So that is one big trend. The other big trend is shift from third-party data to first-party data. So, when the cookies expire and so forth, you will need to have some place where you store your data around interaction with customers and responses and preferences and so forth. So that's why we have this customer data platform to enable that, and then to enable interaction of that, with our APIs. And the third one is like a big thing we're also thinking about is sort of like one big problem that many companies have is through orchestration of the omni-channel journey. So, for example, just to give one example of something I'm thinking a lot about is, like, for example, you're sort of using artificial intelligence to personalize your interactions, but it's very difficult to activate multiple channels in a seamless way. So I think that's something like being on one platform and having multiple APIs connected with customer data profile. It's something that we can enable. And then I would really kind of say that the other big thing that we'll have to take care of the future is, and we don't talk about that a lot, it's security, privacy, and safety. So we are strengthening our security systems, our privacy and compliance systems, given that we are working in so many markets that you mentioned. We had to build that over years. So we have a huge experience, how to do that and so forth. And I gave you kind of 4 trends. I'll give you also 5th is like a massive rise of e-commerce on top of it, especially e-commerce platforms. I won't name all, which they are. Many companies are using these platforms to build their own e-commerce. And then on top of this platform, there is very rich, let's say, marketing ecosystem that's being built on. Important for us in the API market, because that's the way that huge amounts of numbers of customers can in a very seamless way also get to our services, if you see what I mean. So those are maybe 5 major, let's say, trends that keep me awake or keep me excited over time.
Love that. And of course, we're also witnessing the rise of communication platforms as a service. Are there any trends around that keep you awake at night or make you want to jump out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, well, we are, of course, right? But we are in that place, and we see a lot of tech giants trying to enter that place, that space. And we are, given our partnership mindset, we are working with a lot of them. At the same time, we see, kind of fearless competition, but we also see, as you can read in the press, quite a bit of consolidation in this market, if that's a very specific question. So I think we're playing scenarios. How will this play out in the future? We are confident, let's say, in our position, given especially our connectivity and our partnerships with tech companies. Like our next competitor has half of the connectivity that we have. So it is actually a very dynamic market, and we need to be really on our toes how it will play out strategically next couple of years. But definitely, given the potential that you maybe could pick implicitly from all my excitement during this episode, you can see why it's lucrative for many, let's say, cloud companies and so forth, this particular market. And, that's something where we are kind of constantly playing future scenarios and thinking how we position ourselves.
It really is. And one of the things that really stands out that when I was researching you guys is the recent partnership with Adobe too. I mean, can you tell me more about that and ultimately what it means to Infobip and your customers?
Yeah, so we just signed, we have partnership with Adobe. We have partnership with Meta. We have partnership with Oracle that we just published. So given our position that I explained you with the tech stack, we really believe in this flexible co-creation with our partners. So they use parts of our stack to build offering for their clients. So a specific partnership on Adobe is on SMS messaging and on WhatsApp. and we created transactable offers. And I'll explain what I mean by that for people that don't know, for Adobe Marketing Cloud that are on their marketplace. So what this means for us, for them and for their customers is that people, if they need to, let's say, use messaging APIs, SMS, WhatsApp, they can just simply download this bundle with some of our other solutions from their marketplace, and they can use it immediately in their marketing campaigns. So we made it very seamless and easy for customers to use that service. And I think it's win-win situation for all the parties. It's win-win for the customers. They get extra value. It's win-win for Adobe, and it's win-win for us because our service is being used. And similar way, we are working with other partners. And we're really thinking hard about this co-creation partnership strategy.
And the question I've got to ask, with so much going on, it seems like you're spinning so many plates at the moment, but what's next for Infobip? And is there anything else that excites you about the road ahead?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's say there are two vectors. One vector is really business expansion and geographic expansion. We talked about North America, but we're also growing into certain segments where we were not present before. We came mainly from the enterprise segments. We're now expanding that into mid-market and SMBs, either alone or in a partnership play. So that's that business growth part. But at least for me and for some of my colleagues, given that we're an engineering company, it's also the innovation that will bring over the years in the market. And, we're improving our products and we're improving our platform. So we're spending a lot of time still on our core in order to strengthen it and really make it like top-notch quality, which already is, but like we're always evolving that. We want to be kind of very fast. But then it's also a little bit of kind of net new innovation. So I spoke about this kind of converting, customer experience in any channel you want. We need to have tools for people in order to build that. So we're working about that, around that. And then, in the press and everywhere, there are mentions of new modalities of interactions like metaverse and so forth, IoT. So we are also looking into those spaces. How can we adjust our communication platform in order to enable use cases in metaverse or use cases for people that are using, IoT? We have something we call Things, which is our enablement for IoT devices to use our communication platforms and so forth. So that's the other vector that we'll explore over coming years, because we want to keep the pace of innovation a little bit ahead of the market, so it's ready for our customers when they need it.
Well, I've loved chatting with you, but this is the end of the podcast now, where I always ask my guests to leave everyone listening with a note of personal inspiration. So I'm going to ask you, is there a favourite book of yours that we can add to our Amazon wish list that other people can check out that maybe has inspired you? Is there a book that springs to mind that you could add to that list?
Yes. So actually, there is one book that, especially now, it becomes again kind of very interesting, and it's written by a British author, and I think it's called Death of Capitalism.
Yeah.
So I would really, if people didn't read it, I would actually sort of recommend that book, because I think if you look all the economic analysis in recent years and some facts, like 10% of US households hold like 80 or 90% of equity, we sort of realize that we're in this trajectory where some divisions are becoming more obvious. And, this book tells a great story. How can that impact societies? And it gives some sort of ideas. How can we reset that? And whether we entertain the point of view of the author or not, I think it's more important that he raises a really critical question. And I think that we should think about this as collectively as a society. So I would recommend that book to other people who didn't read.
Excellent. Well, I'll add that to our Amazon wish list for anyone to check out. And before I let you go, for anyone interested in Infobip and everything that we've discussed today, what's the best place or the best starting place of finding Infobip and contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Well, it's our either our website, infobip.com, it's simple, or just find us on LinkedIn or see my name. I usually accept connections. I like to be connected with people. So just hit me up or hit Infobip. So those are two most obvious first points of contact.
Awesome. Well, I'll add those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. So much we've covered today, from your story, the story behind the company, the exponential growth, the new Adobe partnership, and how you're using technology to help your customers. All inspirational stuff, and even had a chance to leave us with a great book too. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to sit down and share your story with me today.
It was lovely to spend time with you. I could talk for hours, so hopefully it tells you how good host you are. Thank you very much, and I hope people will find this conversation useful.
What a great guy. And I cannot thank him enough for sharing the story behind Infobip and the exponential growth they've had over the last 5 years, that new Adobe partnership, recent funding, and of course the problems that they're helping businesses solve with their technology. So today we've heard a fantastic story straight out of Croatia. Wherever you're listening in the world, I want to put where you're listening on the map, the startup scene, where you're listening on the map. I want to give you a voice, so please email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes if you'd like to come and join me, if you'd like to send me a message. And most of all, I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. And speaking of which, yes, it's time for me to spin the wheel once again. Today we discussed all things CPaaS, Communications Platforms as a Service. What we're going to talk about tomorrow. You know the drill. I'm not going to tell you where the wheel stops, but I do invite you to join me again tomorrow. So a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.